We've unveiled a mosaic that had been a part of the Office of Mental Health in New Orleans that had been destroyed by Katrina, and a decision was made back in about 2008 to tear the building down, and this mosaic was outside on the wall. And on very short order, our staff, it wasn't my staff at the time, went in and was able to salvage the mosaic, put it in storage for literally 6 years until we heard about it, and we decided we needed to get it out of storage and get it out for public display. So as a result of that, and with assistance from the Daughters of the American Revolution, Louisiana chapter, and their national organization, as well as some money we were able to get from the Percent for Art program, a bill that I authored when I was in the Senate, we were able to get about $260,000 that was necessary to make this happen. And so today we unveil this mosaic in its new home here in the Capitol Park Museum in Baton Rouge, where it looks like it is absolutely made for this wall that we put it on in our general meeting room. So it's an exciting day for the museum and really for art lovers in Louisiana.
What did it take to get this restored and non-public display?
Well, amazingly so. The mosaic itself was not damaged either in the removal, the reinstallation, or during the storage, but it had to be braced, obviously, and held up here. And if you look at it close up, you'll see the interesting method in which it's being held up on the wall. But it was quite an undertaking. We had a gentleman from Ohio who is an expert conservator who did the work for us, and it's just a magnificent piece of Louisiana history.
Tell us a little bit about the artist and the significance.
Well, Conrad Albrizio is a very well-known artist who spent a great deal of time in Louisiana. His work is in the Louisiana State Capitol, the Louisiana Supreme Court building, the Capitol Annex building, the DeRitter Courthouse, a number of other places. And for folks like me, in Allen Hall at LSU, I remember seeing his frescoes on the wall in Allen Hall, not really paying much attention to it back as a student at LSU. So he was a muralist, a fresco painter, a magnificent artist, and this mosaic was his other talent. And so there are a couple of mosaic pieces of his throughout Louisiana as well. Today really represents a series of fortuitous events that allowed us to save this mosaic and also bring it to this great facility. The Office of Cultural Development, and Pam Breaux was still running that department at the time this happened, went to see the right person. They went to see Kathy Berry, who's our chief of staff, and told her about the fact that this mosaic existed. We had no idea that it was there, what the saga was, but they explained how it had been placed in storage, how it had been removed, and that it's sitting there in storage. And neither one of us like a lot of things in storage. We had some things, we had some pieces of art that were on display in some of our buildings, and some that were in storage that we've now shipped to the Alexandria Museum of Art for the public to enjoy in Alexandria. And this was another example of something that doesn't need to be mothballed somewhere, it needs to be seen. So we began those discussions, and Kathy made it very clear that we wanted to make sure this was preserved, and I agreed. And fortuitously, as we were having discussions with the Office of Cultural Development how to make certain we could proceed with this, I had a visit from 3 ladies from the Baton Rouge chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. They were anxious to embrace a project in cooperation with us, and so we had a couple of ideas right off the bat. I remember when we were visiting, I went and got Kathy and said, "Come in here, you need to hear this. I think we may have something here." And we suggested perhaps the U.S. Mint. We're working on a music exhibit at the U.S. Mint, and then we suggested this Albrizio mosaic, and kind of the light bulb went off. And the ladies in our office were very interested in Conrad Albrizio, and they wanted to embrace this project. At the time, it was about a $300,000 undertaking, we thought, to make this happen. And so that was not an easy number that could be reached, obviously. But the ladies went and talked to other officers in the DAR and throughout the state and really lobbied for the Albrizio project. And we heard back from them that they wanted to help us. And interestingly enough, part of the reason was that many of the ladies had grown up with Albrizio's work. Like I did at Allen Hall at LSU. Now, I had no idea who Conrad Albrizio was or what those murals meant, but I was an LSU student in the 70s and went by there in Allen Hall every day and saw him. And so I knew about Albrizio through that. But it was interesting because there were chapters all over the state who had stories to tell. The ladies had stories to tell about remembering Albrizio's work. The DeRitter Post Office, the State Exhibit Museum in Shreveport, obviously our state capitol and the annex where our office is located, the New Iberia Courthouse, the Louisiana Supreme Court, and then of course Allen Hall, where a lot of LSU students got to know Conrad. And ultimately, the DAR decided to take on this project. They applied for a grant with the National DAR, and we began the process of trying to figure out where we could shave some costs or do things a little bit differently. We were able to knock the cost of restoration down a little bit into the mid 200,000 numbers. And then as we were talking about what might make this happen, we all kind of collectively realized that when I was in the state Senate, I had authored a bill that created a percent for art program where a percent of the cost of a project of any state building that was constructed in Louisiana had to designate that small percentage to go for the arts. And that's why you see a lot of beautiful art in its various manifestations in state buildings around the state. And we got to checking, and all of a sudden we learned that the visitor center that fronts on River Road, not an overly used building actually, and we may be finding another use for it somewhere down the road here, but it had never utilized the percent for art component. So all of a sudden we had a state building that had not spent the appropriate money, and bingo, we went to work to get the Division of Administration to recognize that that money needed to be put toward this project, and that it would be art in the Capitol complex, though not necessarily in that building. And that's exactly what happened. So it left us, we got about $200,000 for that, so it left us just the shortfall that had to be made up. And with the help of Pat Reed and the Daughters of the American Revolution, the remaining money was raised rather quickly, and they pushed us over the goal line here. Now, before restoration could begin, we had to fast track, and this was not easy to do either. I hope this changes at some point through the Division of Administration to get a contract approved. And we rushed that along and got a contract approved to make sure this happened. And finally, this mosaic was moved out of Kevin Kelly's warehouse in New Orleans. I don't know if Kevin's made it yet. Is Kevin here? Kevin very generously allowed to store this mosaic for 6 years at no cost. And it was finally moved from his place and delivered to a conservation laboratory in Ohio, where Robert Lodge, who's been mentioned before, an expert in rare work of mosaic and wall tile, mounting and relocation, conserved this work of art. But the real story is not, it's partially obviously his talent as a restoration expert, but think back to the rushed time that Phil described after that mosaic had been sitting there, and they were able to dismantle the piece without really damaging anything and move it to be safeguarded, not knowing where it would be or when it would ever be shown again to the public. But those folks who did that on such short order and with such care really deserve a lot of the credit for this piece looking like it does right now, as you'll see in just a moment. Mr. Lodge recommended cutting the piece into sections and reattaching it in a unique design that you'll see in just a minute, because we obviously went through a lot of discussion about how to place it. And we also immediately thought about this location as the ideal place. We talked about perhaps putting it on the wall outside. We talked about a couple of other locations, but lo and behold, as you'll see in just a moment, it looks like it was tailor-made for this wall in this particular building. Our new little baby is 49 feet long and 5 feet tall. It's going to be permanently installed here on this wall, and you'll have an opportunity to see the restoration project in work with some slides that are being shown, I think, outside in the reception area when we adjourn in just a moment. This is a great addition to the landscape of downtown Baton Rouge, and a great addition to this museum, which is really finally getting the identity that it deserved as the Capitol Park Museum, properly named and adequately identified with signage in front, and a great Friends group. And I want to thank all the members of the Friends group who were already recognized and tell you that they're our fastest growing group of friends that were only recently created, but they've really taken on a passion for this place, and they've helped raise some money and do a lot to help make this a very, very special part of our Louisiana State Museum system. So with that, Mark, let me ask you if you would go unveil the plaque. The plaque will identify the actual mosaic, and then I would ask all of the staff who were involved in helping remove the mosaic from the wall in New Orleans and save it to please come forward and unveil this. Well, it may be Conrad's most beautiful work that is going to be so accessible to people to be able to really enjoy it and see it close up, not just pass by at an Allen Hall or look at it at an inaccessible place, but enjoy this beautiful mosaic, and we'll adjourn to a reception.
What was your reaction when you saw the finished product?
It looks like it's made for this wall. It's an absolute perfect fit. It's beautifully restored, and it's a great little slice of Louisiana history.
Now, if people want to come and see this in person, what should they do?
Just come to the Capitol Park Museum in Baton Rouge, right across the street from the state capitol. There's no charge to come in the museum and to enjoy not only this mosaic, but the tremendous exhibits that are in the museum.
And a website for more information.
They can go to louisianatravel.com. There's also a museum website, but louisianatravel.com will direct them to all the information about traveling around Louisiana and enjoying our many assets.